Welcome, everyone. We're talking about AI today, AI in the telecom industry, and looking at opportunities and challenges for CSPs. So that's me, principal analyst in the telecom practice. My email's there. If you want to email me, feel free to do so, or connect with me on LinkedIn. Before we jump into the content, just want to show where this material is coming from. So the telecom group at TBR covers a variety of topic areas in the telecom market, specifically private cellular networks, the edge computing market, 5G, 6G. We look at hyperscalers and what they're doing in the telecom ecosystem, and a variety of other reports, some individual company reports on the vendor and operator side as well. Reports come out on a quarterly, semi-annual, or annual basis, depending on the report. And the AI report, which is in green on that chart, is what we're going to be sharing some findings from today. The report hasn't actually published yet. It's still in the works, but I pulled together a section of the key points from that report. And that report is going to be publishing sometime in May. So specifically the Telecom AI Market Landscape report, it's going to be deep diving into how communication service providers and vendors that supply the CSPs are adopting AI. And when we say AI, we're talking about the traditional AI and generative AI. And I'm going to parse through what those are and the differences in a bit, in internal operations and in products and services. So basically, what kind of outcomes are these companies in the telecom ecosystem deriving from AI? What kind of solutions are coming to market? What kind of partnerships are forming? All those types of things are going to be covered in that report. And some of those things we're going to be covering on the call today. We're also looking at where this market may evolve into. So we know what's been going on in AI thus far, but where could this market go? What kind of big picture outcomes could we see for the telecom industry? And what does this mean? What are the implications of that? So that's really what we're going to be exploring in that report. So for today's agenda, we're going to be starting off with the history of AI in the telecom industry. We're going to then talk about forward-looking, where we see things going. Then we're going to transition and look at the ecosystem and who some of the types of players are in this ecosystem. We're going to look at use cases specific to generative AI. We're going to look at outcomes, market development hurdles, potential things that could slow market development, key takeaways, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So before we jump into the content from the report, I want to just make a distinction between AI and generative AI. AI is not new. AI has been around for at least a decade. And we're calling this traditional AI, traditional in quotation marks. This is also referred to as predictive AI, machine learning, or software robotic process automation, or RPA is the acronym used for that. So there's other things I've seen it go by as well, but essentially what traditional AI is using structured data to predict outcomes and to make changes. This structured data requires data cleaning and data labeling. So there needs to be a prepared set of data that is leveraged to train the prediction model. Essentially, that's how AI has started. And where this is going, the new thing is generative AI. And generative AI uses unstructured data, which does not require data cleaning and data labeling, at least not to the same extent that structured data does. Examples of unstructured data include images, could be documents, like legal documents, things like that. It could be social feedback. could be the written word, so handwritten notes that are scanned. It could be PDF documents, social media posts, things of that nature could all be inputs into a generative AI model. Most enterprise data is unstructured. By nature, it's unstructured. I've seen data points put out by some of the consultancies. One of the major consultancies said that by their estimates, on average, about 80% of an enterprise's data lake is unstructured. So that would mean about 20% is structured. So what I want to do here is I want to make it clear how big of a change this is from where we've been with traditional AI and the opportunities and the potential of generative AI because of the much broader scope that it opens up for business transformation. So the history of AI in the telecom industry. The telecom industry has been using traditional AI since the early 2010s. By our research, we've traced it back to the 2012 timeframe, is when we started to hear about predictive AI, machine learning, and RPA being utilized in the telecom industry. So more than 10 years ago. What we saw in terms of predictive solutions leveraging structured data. So some examples of that are anomaly detection. So think about that from a cybersecurity standpoint, looking for anomalies in data traffic, looking for fraud, maybe in billing or things of that nature, related to SIM cards, things of that nature. And then network performance. So looking at how to predict network performance and make adjustments to the network to tune the network and optimize the network. We also saw chatbots get more intelligent. So chatbots being used for basic customer care tasks, where you ask it a question and it ingresses what you're saying to it, and then it will send you to another path in the chat with the call center. So employing predictive AI has also been used for optimizing energy consumption. And this is a use case that became more common following geopolitical events and the COVID-19 impact. And when we saw the Russia-Ukraine situation develop and the Middle East situation develop, and then the supply chain issues that developed during COVID, as three examples of that, what we saw was CSPs starting to look at how can they re-look at and maybe derive more efficiencies out of how much energy they're using for running the network. And we saw companies like Nokia and others come to market with solutions that meet that need. And if you look at what those solutions are leveraging, in many cases, they're using predictive AI and machine learning models to turn on or turn off or turn up or turn down the infrastructure so that it's being used when it needs to be used, and it's not being used, it's being turned off, or the power is being reduced at non-traffic heavy times. And more using that modeling to better map the demand on the network with the supply being provided by the network. So these are all examples of what we consider to be traditional AI. Now, this market's evolving. AI has become the #1 buzzword, not only in telecom, but I would say across all verticals for business transformation. And if we look at a timeline here, we talked before about the traditional AI era and some of the use cases that were utilized for that and continue to be utilized. When we move to the generative AI era, which really started at the beginning of last year, ChatGPT came on the scene in 4Q22, and then in 2023, we really started to see significant momentum behind this, behind this technology. The generative AI era we see being, let me put it this way, by 2030, we're expecting to see significant integration of generative AI use cases into the fabric of CSPs across a whole range of domains within the CSP. We're going to talk about some of those domains in upcoming slides. But what I want to stress here is that the magnitude of the use cases, the amount of use cases that could be covered with generative AI, remember I said most data is unstructured in a company. If you can make sense of that and derive business outcomes from that data, that greatly expands the scope of the business transformation. So this is a big deal, and it's going to be through 2030, we're going to see significant business outcomes being realized by leading telcos. And then when we get to the next decade, we're calling this the digital transformation. I need to come up with a better phrase for this, but essentially it's the evolution of generative AI to the point where it becomes embedded into the fabric of the telco, running closed loop automation workflows with fewer humans or without any humans in the loop. And this is going to become foundational for digital enterprises to be cost competitive and to bring new offerings and capabilities to their customers. We're also going to see generative AI reach a level of maturity where voice platforms will become a surrogate to end users. Now, there's different ways to think about this. The best example I can give of this is through movies, in terms of where this might be going. So if anybody's seen the Iron Man series, the superhero movie, where Tony Stark has dialogue with Jarvis. Jarvis is what I would consider to be a voice surrogate, where you're having a bilateral conversation, intelligent conversation with the AI, and the AI is carrying out commands, in some cases, very complex commands that it's being asked. And generative AI has the potential and is very likely to attain that level of maturity at some point next decade, where you have declarative outcomes from the use of these systems and systems of systems, if you will. So that's when things really start to get interesting and really start to bring big picture transformation into businesses, how businesses function, how they bring value into their respective markets, and how they stay competitive. It's going to be extremely important. So the other thing I want to stress here is that the pace of innovation is accelerating, and the time to innovation, those cycles are compressing. So what that means is we are very confident to make the statement that by the end of this decade, we're going to see significant transformation in specific areas of telcos. And it's only 6 years away, but because of the speed with which innovation is happening, in fact, the AI is actually helping to speed up that innovation because it's freeing up the workforce to do other tasks. So you're actually getting a compounding of the productivity in much shorter time intervals. So the pace of disruption is going to be much faster than what we saw with traditional AI, as well as other technology paradigms that we've seen in the past. it's going to be much, much faster. Okay, so ecosystem overview. There's a bunch of categories of companies that participate in the enablement of CSPs from an AI perspective. So the hyperscalers, they not only provide the cloud infrastructure where they're hosting workloads and bringing AI capabilities to their customers through the cloud. The hyperscalers are also developing custom silicon that's optimized for AI workloads, that's bringing innovation and new capabilities and functionality to AI. They also own outright or have significant stakes in foundational large language models. These are the models that will be the foundation for conversational AI, where you're talking to the AI and it is carrying out tasks for you or able to process very complex environments. These are things that the hyperscalers dominate, and that's very unlikely to change. The hyperscalers do a variety of other things as well. I've got Amazon, Microsoft, and Google listed there. There are some others, but those are the big three. Apple's doing some interesting things on the endpoint device side with AI. More to come on that. But from a CSP standpoint, the enablement of AI innovation into the CSP, a lot of that's going to come from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. There's also a range of consulting and systems integration companies that are providing business and technical consulting, as well as systems integration services to help CSPs implement AI-related solutions for their businesses. And you have all the usual suspects listed here. There's also a broad range of lower tier companies that are specialist firms that provide these types of services, like a C3.ai, for example. So this is a huge opportunity for these companies to help the telcos with this transformation. On the chip maker side, you've got the AMDs, NVIDIAs, and TSMCs of the world. These are the companies that are providing the silicon. They participate in that ecosystem to bring chips that can run AI models and those very complicated algorithms, doing things for training and inferencing. On the IT equipment provider side, these are companies providing servers that are leveraged to do the AI training and inference. So the Dells, the HPEs, Supermicros of the world providing that equipment. And then on the software platform and application provider side, this is a category of companies that provide software and platforms that leverage AI to improve functionality and capabilities. These are companies that are bringing AI functionality into the telco and enabling that transformation in various ways. So companies doing this would be Amdocs, CSG. You've got Red Hat on the hybrid multi-cloud, and then bringing AI functionality into the foundational infrastructure of the telco. You've got companies like UiPath that have a platform for seamlessly bringing AI capabilities and solutions into companies. Telco is one of their major focus areas. You've also got companies on the CRM side like Salesforce, and then you also have ServiceNow that participates in that domain as well. So a variety of companies that are participating here, bringing value from AI into the telco environment, either from a network standpoint, from an IT standpoint, or from a customer-facing standpoint. So on the use case side, when I went to Mobile World Congress this year, one of the things that struck me was how many use cases there are for generative AI. And literally, there's hundreds. And not only are there hundreds, but they make sense. They make logical sense. And in most cases, there is a theoretical clear path to an outcome. That outcome could be cost optimization. It could be revenue, new revenue. That's the way to think about it. And some of those use cases, so I've listed out some of them here. I separated them by domain of the telco. So you have on the customer care side, you have much more intelligent chatbots than we had with the more static chatbots from traditional AI. These Gen AI enhanced chatbots can handle higher level customer issues. There's also bill explainer. There's contextualized prompts for care agents to equip and augment care agents to do their job more effectively, leading to better outcomes with the customer. There's foreign language support. Generative AI will be able to speak many languages fluently, understand context of what someone's saying, understand slang terminology, and understand very close to a human. At some point, it will probably eclipse human speech at some point in the future. You're talking to something that understands what you're saying, what you're asking for, gets smarter over time from the training, and can bring that value into the customer conversation. That's very important, especially for companies that have multilingual customer bases and operations in many countries. Truck route optimization is another use case for generative AI. Really, that's being used for traditional AI, but generative AI can enhance that. For administrative functions, there's document creation. There is, so think about legal documents, taking a first pass at that. Think about querying documents, getting context of what's going on from very large volume of documents, doing meeting transcriptions, so summarization of a note, summarization of a meeting, so that someone can get the spark notes essentially of what happened in the meeting. Those types of use cases. On the HR side as well, there's many use cases. Taking a first pass at new roles, new careers that are being posted on job boards, things of that nature. Scanning through applicants to check for who's qualified, who might not be qualified, who do you want to interview, take the next step with, leveraging generative AI to contextualize and process and synthesize a large volume of resumes to do that. Those are all use cases for administrative functions. There's obviously many, many more, but these are some of the more common ones that we've heard of. On the IT side, there's code development. So taking a first pass at code. Today, it's lower level coding tasks, but over time, as the models get trained, we're going to see much more advanced coding. We're going to see the AI be able to handle more advanced coding that maybe a mid-level software engineer would be doing. On the sales side, taking a first pass at creating proposals for customers, doing augmenting salespeople with dynamic and contextualized prompts to help salespeople be more educated and help educate the customer about a particular product or service. And then offer customization and personalization. This is bringing more choice to the customer and tailoring a solution to a customer versus doing most customers fit this mold, therefore we're going to offer this to all customers. Generative AI can help companies cost effectively bring personalization into offerings, and that may help with revenue maximization as well as reducing churn from a telco perspective. So there's a lot of potential benefits there for telcos. On the marketing side, taking a first pass at creating marketing materials, campaigns, architecting more effective marketing campaigns using psychology information and processing large volumes of data around the effectiveness of prior campaigns and how to optimize new campaigns. These models can be trained using that unstructured data to optimize decision-making and validate path forward for business decisions. These are very important things for decision makers at businesses. And then on the network side, there's code development there as well. There's performance monitoring. There's advanced alarm management, handling more complex alarm situations. These are all areas where generative AI, we're going to see this get integrated into the telcos. Okay, so from an outcome perspective, so I'm going to start with new revenue. One area we see telcos generating, or where they will be able to generate new revenue from AI, is for revenue protection and upsell. So what I mean by that is, let's say someone calls into the contact center and they have a problem with their service and they're not happy. The AI will be able to detect, and if it's allowed, it could make the customer whole in terms of finding a solution that meets their needs and rectifying the situation. There is also an opportunity at that point to do upsell, because maybe the customer is not aware of a certain service. Maybe they're not aware there's a promotion for that new service, and they can actually get a better price for value. The AI could be trained to educate the customer on that and potentially, convert that customer into a higher, more premium solution. It can also help reduce the incidence of people defecting to other carriers. So these are ways that telcos can leverage AI from a customer journey standpoint to retain subs and potentially get incremental new revenue from those subscribers. And then there's GPU as a service. The idea behind this is the telco hosts GPUs in their cloud, and they expose that capability to their end customers. I think this model might work in some countries in Europe just because of the sovereignty requirements. In other markets, might not be as big of an opportunity for telcos. That would more be provided straight from the hyperscalers. So we'll see where that goes as a use case, but there are operators out there today that are actively looking into this opportunity. And then, of course, there's the resale of vendor solutions. So the telco acting as a channel, bringing AI capabilities and functionality to end customers, leveraging their partner offerings. So think about a cyber security vendor that has AI capabilities baked into a solution, and they may be using the operator to as a channel or as a conduit to get to the end customers. On the cost reduction side, the way we want to think about this is magnitude of how much is that domain going to change from generative AI and traditional AI. I don't want to belittle traditional AI. That's still going to be a big component of this. But when I talked about how much broader the scope is for generative AI, that's really what we're focusing on here. So the domains that we're going to see the biggest impact is customer care, the administrative functions, IT, sales, and marketing. On the network side, it's going to take a little longer to play out. And we don't think the impact's going to be as significant as in these other domains. So we did this on a relative basis in this ranking. Some of the outcomes here would be making the workforce more productive, so increasing the productivity of existing workers. Think about that augmentation and helping workers free up time to work on higher level tasks. There's the optimization of the workforce, maybe a reallocation of the workforce. That's going to drive cost reduction for the operators. And then from an energy optimization standpoint, we already are seeing this with traditional AI, but I think with generative AI, we could see more advanced solutions to help operators better manage their sustainability and operate the network more efficiently than they have been. And again, using unstructured data to contextualize, predict, and carry out tasks in the network in a more efficient manner. Energy is one of the largest OpEx items for operators. So this is one key area where telcos will be looking to not only meet sustainability objectives, but also to reduce their costs, the consumption of energy. Okay, so there are some potential hurdles. Governments are a wild card for AI. There is a potential that governments, especially in certain countries, may slow market momentum considerably, and there's some reasons for that. Regulation moves slowly, especially for technologies that are complicated and broadly impactful to society. So AI checks both of those boxes, and governments really want to get their heads around this, and they want to figure out how do they regulate this. And there's also a lot of politics that go around this. So there is tremendous uncertainty about how is this AI phenomenon actually going to play out, and how much intervention our government's going to have to play here. There is fear of AI in the market. Some people view AI as a threat. And there's also considerations around the impact on the workforce, the impact on the economy, potential negative externalities on the economy. There's national security considerations. There's potential for bias, which is a big political issue. There's the potential for infringement of intellectual property, and there's also data privacy concerns, corporate and individual. These are things that nobody has an answer for yet. Everything is still being trial and errored and figuring out what makes the most sense and what's the path forward here. This is where the consultancies really shine, because they're the ones at the, right up there in the middle of this, and bringing thought leadership to these topics, how to deal with it, how to think about it, and how to chart a path forward. The EU is probably going to be one of the most restrictive regulatory bodies regarding AI due to the focus on privacy and member sovereignty. We saw this with GDPR is challenging market development, and we just see much more uncertainty there now with generative AI. How is that market actually going to develop? And might that some of those ideas and implementations of policy spill over into other countries that want to adopt similar approaches and rules and regulations? So that this all remains to be seen. We're going to need to wait for the market to settle and get more clarity before we start to see more firm government policy. And then the rules of the game can be better understood. Now, this is a fluid situation, right? You never arrive. There's always going to be changes to policy, adjustments, new things that come up that need to be addressed. But there is tremendous uncertainty about these things. And companies are really, some companies are there's so much uncertainty that some companies don't want to move forward, because the risks to them, if they make a mistake, could be very significant. So specifically, the potential risk of litigation, the potential impact of break in trust among companies, between governments and individuals, and between all of these parties. The potential risks are incalculable. So, some types of companies are going to wait and see what happens before implementing, just because their value at risk potentially from a legal standpoint could be, it could be very significant. So there needs to be a risk management aspect that is considered here for implementation of AI. Okay, so key takeaways, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So generative AI is going to drive the next phase of cost reduction at CSPs. AI has been utilized for over 10 years in the telecom industry. Think of generative AI as the next phase of that evolution. And this is very much about unstructured data, making use of unstructured data at scale. This is a game changer. The vast majority of outcomes for AI for telecom is going to be cost savings. When we look at the use cases, when we look at magnitude, when we look at the ecosystem, this from a telco perspective, yeah, they may be able to drive some incremental revenue from AI, but the vast majority of the outcomes they're going to realize is going to tie back to, in some way, to cost savings. Operating more efficiently, optimizing workflows, optimizing energy usage. These are all the areas where the telcos are really going to experience the benefits. Customer care, administrative, and sales domains are likely going to be disrupted first by generative AI among CSPs. And again, I want to stress this because this is so uncertain right now with government involvement. What kind of rules and regulations? What are the rules of the game, essentially? And companies that want to be an early adopter or an early innovator, you know, they may have a reckoning event if they pursue a path, try to be early to market, and then they get, you know, they get implicated in new regulations that come on the horizon. So this should not be underestimated. Okay, so with that, we'll open it up for Q&A. So I see there's a bunch of questions in the queue. I'm going to go down each one, and when we run out of time, we run out of time. So the first question is, what's your view of hyperscalers' role in the telecom industry from an AI perspective? So I listed a few areas where the hyperscalers are playing. They're not quite end-to-end in terms of bringing solutions to telcos. They do need partners as well, like the systems integrators and the consultancies. They play a key role for industry development. The hyperscalers, though, are providing, think of them as more vertically integrated from an infrastructure standpoint. So they, down to the silicon layer and the infrastructure layer, they have the physical infrastructure and the digital infrastructure, the platforms, the software, all of the inputs to bring AI capabilities and outcomes to their customers. And that's really how they should be thought of in this market. The next question is, how are CSPs adopting generative AI? Is it through hyperscalers? Is it through LLM providers? Is it through SIs? So most of what we're seeing as of now is this is being driven by the hyperscalers and the consultancies and systems integration companies. That's where most of the innovation is funneling through to the end customer and being institutionalized at the end customer. A lot of the generative AI use cases are currently in a POC format or doing trials. There's not many situations where this is commercialized and running, running workloads in telco environments today. I'm specifically talking about generative AI. Traditional AI already is institutionalized at operators and vendors, equipping the operators. So hyperscalers and the CNSI firms is where we see most of the activity currently. The next question is, can you please clarify what did you mean by CSPs in the context of this presentation with a couple of examples? Sure. So Verizon, NTT, Vodafone, Telefonica, Comcast. So wired and wireless operators and cable operators are really who we're referring to when we say CSP. The next question is, hang on one sec. There's a lot of questions, folks. So we're gonna get through as many as we can here. The next question is GPU as a service similar to what NVIDIA does with its cloud gaming service? I'm not sure about NVIDIA's cloud gaming service, but the GPU as a service, essentially what it is the telcos are buying GPUs, putting them in their own data centers that they're running, and then exposing that capabilities to their customers. They're basically hosting the AI-enabled servers, and they're enabling end customers to participate in that environment. So think about like small and medium-sized businesses or large enterprises that are leveraging that hosted data center to ingress AI capabilities. The next question is, do you see CSPs looking to develop their own models to provide that reduction, or are they going to be purchasing those capabilities? So telcos, generally speaking, are technology consumers, not technology producers. So what I mean by that is they tend to take innovation that the ecosystem provides them. So it's going to be companies like the hyperscalers that are bringing the innovation into the telco environments, and then the telco's benefiting from that technology, versus the telco home growing their own AI, algorithms and things of that nature, and then selling it themselves. So in most cases, that's going to be what happens. And there might be some caveats to that where a telco or a group of telcos create a consortium and do maybe build their own LLM. I know that some of that's happening, or there's ambition to do that among some telcos. But the vast majority of the innovation is not going to be produced by the telcos. It's going to come into the telcos from the vendor community. So someone here is asking about why their company's not listed on the ecosystem chart. So we only provided examples. There are many companies that are in each of those buckets that we showed that are participating in AI. If your company's not listed there, it's, don't take it personally. In the full report, there's going to be a much bigger list. We're going to have hundreds of companies listed there that are participating in various domains of the ecosystem. The next question is, which telcos are the early adopters and what use cases have they implemented? So from a generative AI standpoint, most of it's proof of concept currently, but the use cases I showed in that slide are in the POC stage. Some of the leading operators are the usual suspects among the tier ones. So, AT&T, Verizon, NTT, the Korea-based operators, Telefonica, Vodafone, Deutsche Telekom. Those are the types of companies that are, what I would argue, those are the ones that are relatively furthest ahead among the CSPs. The next question is, what is the impact on network advancement for Gen AI to work for enterprises? So I'm not sure I understand that question, but if you're talking about private networks, yes, there is a play for generative AI to come through private network solutions and bring value to enterprises. There's running workloads more efficiently maybe leveraging edge computing to run more complicated workloads at the edge of the network, closer to the premise or in the premise, things of that nature. I think there's a good tie-in there. The next question is, how do the traditional technologies for voice and messaging play into generative AI customer care? So in particular, does RCS in 5G play a role? I think it does play a role. I haven't given, for RCS specifically, I haven't given it much thought, but I definitely think it has a role there. Maybe we could follow up on that separately. The next question is, to what degree are advancements in AI expected to accelerate CSPs embracing network disaggregation and the move away from traditional platforms? So that's possible. There's also a strong case to be made that you'd want to buy a full stack from a vendor. And when I say a vendor, I mean like a hyperscaler. If you're buying cloud services, like let's say cloud network functions from a hyperscaler, and that hyperscaler is also bringing AI functionality, closed loop automation, and outcome-based solutions over those services, there's a strong case to be made that potentially it would help hyperscalers capture more wallet share in the telcos. Because the AI, essentially the idea would be that the AI helps all of those domains work better together and give maximum outcomes to the telco. So what I mean by that is, let's say OSS and BSS systems are provided by a hyperscaler in conjunction with vendor partners, but hosted in the hyperscale cloud, and the hyperscaler has embedded AI capabilities and outcome-based solutions in that OSS BSS stack, and then they can bring that unified solution into the telco. So I wouldn't say that it's, I think there's a strong case to be made on both sides for the disaggregation side, but also for the verticalization and actually the fewer vendor side. I think there's a strong case there as well. The next question is, how do you see AI or systems of systems in the digital transformation age interacting with other AI? There's 50 different AIs from every software hardware vendor a CSP uses, or a smaller number that can integrate across all the hardware software. Yeah, so this question comes back to my prior comments. AI is, so there's a reason why the hyperscalers are investing tens of billions of dollars, each of them, on AI per year. And you just saw Meta report earnings yesterday, and they said that they are actually increasing by several more $billion their already high CapEx and OpEx investments pertaining to AI. I think it's just another example where something's up there in terms of their own business transformation and how the hyperscalers evolve and make their next $10 billion in top-line revenue, the hundreds of billions in top-line revenue among the group of them. So AI, I think, is a way for the hyperscalers to create much deeper stickiness to their platforms and services and products. And it's a way for them to not only increase the stickiness of their customers, but also expand their share of wallet and generate higher margins from those customer relationships. Now, in conjunction with their partners as well, but if you look at value created from AI, a lot of that's going to accrue to the hyperscalers themselves. So AI is extremely important for the future growth, development of the hyperscalers, and the intention is that it's going to help them generate their next phase of revenue growth, generate higher margins, and get a better stickiness with their customers. So think of it in that way. All right, I think we're going to take one more question. And the question is there an estimate on the ROI from generative AI? So it's early days for that. I can give you some ways to think about this. So ROI would look different for each use case, and then the scalability of that use case in a particular company. So because this is a software platform, and the greater scale you put on that over a domain, the greater benefit you're going to get. So there's an economies of scale aspect here that needs to be factored in. If you look at some of the biggest cost items for an operator, it's labor, it's energy. Those are the two big ones. And those also happen to be the two areas that generative AI is likely to make a big impact on, the biggest impact on from a telco standpoint. So it's reasonable to assume that the ROI is going to make sense, provided the scale is there, and the data, that there's a good data pool to derive those outcomes. So what I mean by that is you're going to have your foundational LLMs, and you may have industry-specific LLMs that are optimized for specific use cases for the operators. And some people call them telco-centric or telco-grade LLMs. And the strength of the LLM, the accuracy level, those types of things are going to play into the efficacy and the ROI that could be derived from those solutions. And the other thing to think about with AI, from an ROI standpoint, is that the AI it gets better over time. So there's training and inferencing going on, but over time, the more data that goes into the system, that the system's processing, and the more inference that is compounded inside of those systems, the greater the outcome potential is. So over time, it would be reasonable to assume that ROIs would improve over time, generally speaking, because the systems are continually getting better. At least in theory, that's how I would think about it.